Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Wicked. The Birth of a Witch. It was nearly evening by the time Frex had worked up the courage to enter the ramshackle hamlet of Rush Margins. He was in deep sweat. He hit his heels to the ground and pumped his clenched fist and called out in a hoarse, carrying tone, "Hist ye of small confidence, gather while ye may, for temptation is broad to try ye surely." The words were archaic, even ridiculous, but they were. Here came the sullen fishermen dragging their empty nets from the dock. Here came the subsistence farmers whose hardscrabble plots had borne little during this dry year. Before he had even begun, they all looked guilty as sin. They followed him to the rickety steps of the canoe repair house. Frex knew that everyone expected this evil clock to arrive at any instant. Gossip was as contagious as the plague. He yelled at them for their thirsty anticipation. "Ye are as dull as toddlers, reaching their hands to touch the pretty embers. Ye are as a spawn-dragoned womb, ready to suck on tits of fire." They were time-worn scriptural impressions, and they fell a little flat tonight. He was tired and not his best. "Brother Frexbar," said Fee, the mayor of Rush Margins, "could you perhaps tone down your harangue until we get a chance to see what fresh new temptation might take?" "You have no mettle to resist new forms," said Frex, spitting. Have you been our able teacher all these years?" said Fee. "We've hardly had such a good chance to prove ourselves against sin. We're looking forward to the spiritual test of it all." The fishermen laughed and jeered, and Frex intensified his glower. But at the sound of unfamiliar wheels in the stony ruts of the road, they all turned heads and fell instant. He had lost their attention before he even got started. The clock was being drawn by 4 horses and escorted by the dwarf and his cohort of young thugs. Its broad hoof was crowned by the dragon. But what a beast! It looked poised as if ready to spring, as if indeed invested with life. The skin of the house was decorated in carnival colors, burnished with gold leaf. The fisherman gaped at as it drew near. Before the dwarf could announce the time of the performance, before the youths could draw out their clubs, Frex leaped on the lower step of the thing, a fold-down stage on hinges. Why is this thing called a clock? The only clock face it has is a dull, flat, dull, and lost in all that distracting detail. Furthermore, the hands don't move. Look, see for yourself. They're painted to remain at 1 minute before midnight. All you see is the mechanics, my friends. I know this for a fact. You'll see mechanical cornfields growing, moons waxing and waning, a volcano to spew a soft red cloth done with black and red sequins. With all this tick-tocky business, why not leave a pair of circular arms on the clock face? Why not, I asked you. I'm asking you, yes, you Gonnet, and you Stoy, and you Paparita. Why no real clock here? They were not listening, Gonnet and Stoy and Parita, nor the others. They were too busy staring in anticipation. Of course not, is that the clock isn't meant to measure earthly time, but the time of the soul. Redemption and condemnation time. For the soul, each instance is always a minute short of judgment. 1 minute short of judgment, my friends. If you die in the next 60 seconds, would you want to spend eternity in the suffocating depths reserved for idolaters? Awful lot of noise in the neighborhood tonight, said someone in the shadows, and the spectators laughed. Above Frex, he rolled to see. From a little door emerged a small, yapping puppy dog, its hair dark, as tightly curled as Frex's own. The dog bounced on a spring, and the pitch of chatter was annoyingly high. The laughter grew. Evening fell harder, and it was less easy for Frex to tell who was laughing, who was now shouting for him to move aside so they could see. He wouldn't move, so he was bundled unceremoniously from his perch. The dwarf gave a poetic welcome. All our lives are activity without meaning. We burrow rat-like into life, and we squirm rat-like through it, and rat-like we are flung into our graves at the end. Now and then, why shouldn't we hear a voice of prophecy or see a miracle at play? Beneath the apparent sham and indeed of our rat-like lives A humble pattern and meaning still applies. Come near, my good people, and watch what little extra knowledge augurs for your lives. The time dragon sees before and beyond within the truth of your sorry span years here. Look what it shows you. The crowd pushed forward. The moon had risen. It's like the eyes of an angry, vengeful god. Give over. Let me go, Frex called. It was worse than he thought. He had never been manhandled by his own congregation. The clock unfolded a story about a publicly pious man with lamb's wool beard and dark curly locks, who preached simplicity, poverty, and generosity while keeping a hidden offer of gold and emeralds. The double hinge-like bosom of a weak-chinned daughter of blue blood society. The scoundrel was run through an iron stake in a most delicate way and served up his hungry flock as roast-flanked minister. This ponders to your basest instinct, Frex yells, his arm frozen and his face magenta with fury. But now the darkness was almost total. Someone came up behind him to silence him. An arm encircled his neck. He twisted to see which damn parishioner took such liberties. But all the faces were cloaked by hoods. He was kneed in the groin, doubled over, his face in the dirt. A foot kicked him square between the buttocks, and his bowels released. The rest of the crowd, however, were not watching. They were howling with mirth at some other entertainment put on by the clock dragon. A sympathetic woman in a widow's shawl grabbed his arm and led away. He was too foul, too much in pain to straighten up and see who it was. I'll put you down the foot settler, I will, under a burlap, crooned the good wife. For they'll see you after tonight with pitchforks the way that thing is behaving itself. They'll look for you in your lodge, but they won't look at you in my keeping room. Melena, he croaked, they'll find her. She'll be seen too, said his neighbor. We women can manage that much, I guess. In the minister's lodge, Melena struggled with consciousness as a pair of midwives went in and out of focus before her. One was the fishwife, the other a placid crone. They took turns feeling her forehead, peering between her legs, and stealing glances at the few bountiful trinkets and measure Melena had managed to bring from Colin grounds. You chew that pace of pinlobalese, ducky, you do that. You'll be unconscious before you know it, said the fishwife. You'll relax, we'll pop this little sweetheart, and all will be well in the morning. The rest of you could smell the rose water and a fairy dew, but you stink like the rest of us. Come on, ducky, chew on. At the sound of a knock, the crone looked up guiltily from the chest she was kneeling before and rushing through. She let the lid close with a bang and affected a position of prayer, eyes closed. Enter, she called. A maid with tender skin and high color came on. Oh, I hope someone will be here, he said. How is she? Nearly out, and so is the babe, answered the fishwife, an hour more, I reckon. Well, I'm told to warn you. The men are drunk and on the prowl. They've been riled up by that dragon of the magic clock, you know, and are looking for Frex to kill him. The clock said to. They'll likely stagger out here. Better get the wife safely away. Can she be moved? No, I cannot be moved, thought Melena. And if the peasants find Frex, tell them to kill him good and hard for me, for I never knew a pain so extraordinary that made me see the blood behind my own eyes. Kill him for doing this to me. As this thought, she smiled in a moan of relief and passed out. Let's leave her here and run for it, said the maiden. The clock said to kill her too, and the little dragon she's going to give birth to. I don't want to get caught. We've got our own reputations to uphold, said the fishwife. We can't abandon the fancy lady thing in mid-delivery. I don't care what any clock says. The crone, her head back in the chest. Anyone for some real lace from Gillikin? There's a hay cart in the lower field, but let's do it now, said the fishwife. Come, let me fetch it. You, old mother hag, get your face out of the linens and come dance in this pretty pink bow. Righto, now we go. A few minutes later, the wife, the crone, the wife, and the maiden were trundling the hay cart along a rarely used stack underneath the spindles and bracken of the autumn woods. The wind had picked up. It was whistled over the trees, foreheads of the clock hills. Melena, sprawled and blankless, heaved and moaned in unconscious pain. They heard a drunken mob pass, with pitchforks and torches, and the woman stood silently and terrified, listening to the slurred curses. Then they pressed on with greater latitude till they came upon a foggy corpse, the edge of the graveyard for unconsecrated corpses. With it they saw blurred outlines of the clock. It had been left there for safekeeping by the dwarf. No fool he could guess this particular corner of the world was the last jumping villagers would seek tonight. The dwarf and his boykins were drinking in the tavern too, said the maiden breathlessly. There's no one here to stop us. The crone said, so you've been peering in the tavern windows at the men, you slut. She pushed open the door to the back of the clock. She found a crawl space. Pendulums hung ominously in the gloom. Her huge toothed wheels looked primed to slice any trespasser into sausage rounds. Come on, drag her in, said the crone. The night of torches and fog gave way at dawn to broad bluffs of thundercloud, dancing skeletons of lightning, glimpses of blue sky appearing briefly, though sometimes it rained so hard that it seemed more like mud drops falling than water. The midwives, crawling on hands and knees out of the back of the clock wagon, had their little discharge at last. They protected the infant from the dripping gutter. Look, a rainbow, said the senior, bobbing his head. A thick scarf of colored light hung in the sky. What they saw, rubbing the calm blood off the skin, was it just a trick of the light? After all, following the storm, the grass did seem to throb its own color. The roses zinged and hovered with crazy glory in their stems. But even with these effects of light and atmosphere, the midwives couldn't deny what they saw. Beneath the spit of the mother's fluid, the infant glistened a scandalous shade of pale emerald. There was no wail, no bark of newborn outrage. The child opened his mouth, breathed, and kept its own counsel. Wine, you fiend, said the crone. It's your first job. The baby shrieked its obligations. Another willful voice, said the fishwife, sighing. Shall we kill it? Don't be so nasty to it, said the crone. It's a girl. Ha, said the bleary-eyed maiden. Look again, there's the weather vane. For a minute, they were in disagreement, even with the child naked before them. Only after a second and third while was it clear that the child was indeed feminine. Perhaps in labor some bit of organic effluvia had caught and quickly dried in the cloven place. Once toweled, she was observed to be prettily formed, with a long, elegant head, forearms nicely turned out, clever pinching little buttocks, cunning fingers with scratchy little nails, and an undeniable green cast to the skin. There was a solemn blush to the cheeks and belly, a beige effect on the clenched eyelids, a tawny scrape on the scalp showing the pattern of eventual hair, but the primary effect was inevitable. Look what we get for our trouble, said the maiden. A little green pat of butter. Why don't we kill it? You know what people will say. I think it's rotten, said the fishwife, checking for the root of a tail, counting fingers and toes. It smells like dung. That is dung you're smelling, you idiot. You're squatting in a cow patty pie. It's sick, it's feeble, that's why it's that color, lost in the puddle. Drowned the thing, she'll never know. She'll be out for hours in her ladylike faints. They giggled. They cradled the infant in the crook of their arms, passing around to test for its weight and balance. To kill it was the kindest course of action. The question was how. Then the child yawned, and the fishwife absentmindedly gave it a finger to nurse on. And the child bit the finger off the second knuckle, and almost choked on the gush of blood. The digit dropped out of its mouth and in the mud like a bobbin. The women catapulted into action. The fishwife lunged to strangle the girl, and the crone and the maiden flared up in defense. The finger was dug out of the mire and shoved in the apron poppy to sew it back on the hand that lost it. It's a cock. She just realized she didn't have one, screeched the maiden, and fell on the ground laughing. Oh, beware the stupid boy that first tries to please himself with her. She'll snip his young sprout off for a souvenir. The midwives crawled back to the clock and dropped the thing off at its mother's breast, afraid to consider mercy murder for fear of what else the baby might bite. Maybe she'll chop the tit off next. That'll bring her drowsy frailness around quick enough, the crone chuckled. Though what a child that sips blood even before the first suck of its mother's milk. They left a pipkin of water nearby, and under the cover of the squall they went squelching away to find their sons and husbands and brothers, and beat them if they were available, or bury them if not. In the shadows, the infant stared overhead at the old and regular teeth of Time's clock. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. See you later.